Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of When Life Happens, the podcast about mental growth. My name is 𝘱𝘦𝘥𝘆𝘭𝘦, and I'm your host. Today, I will speak with my guest, Steve Phillip, about suicide prevention, a topic which really needs more attention and awareness. We speak about his late son, Jordan, and about the foundation he raised after him, the Jordan Legacy Foundation. Please check this website online. I want to thank Steve from the bottom of my heart for his openness, his kindness, and the work he does. Welcome, Steve. Welcome to this podcast of When Life Happens. You're here because of a topic that is for some people quite unusual, or for some people even a taboo, but which is really important, especially when it comes to mental health. And then we come, at Jordan, at your son.
Yes, thank you, Simone. Firstly, for inviting me on. And, this is a story over the last 19 months, I've spoken about many times, and doesn't really get any easier particularly. But we're talking about the topic of suicide. And as you say, that is a taboo topic for many people. It's not a comfortable topic. Even saying the word is difficult for many people. But it was a word that very rarely had ever entered my vocabulary or even my thinking process until December the 4th of 2019. And a fairly regular day for me. I was working as a consultant, delivered training around social media, and was working with a large organization in the Midlands in the UK. Got back into my car at 4:22 precisely on December the 4th, and saw an incoming call from Jordan's girlfriend, Charlotte. And in the next few minutes, she told me she'd come to his house and found out he'd taken his own life. And kind of from that moment, the world just unraveled really at that point.
Yeah. I can't even imagine the feeling or which went to your body, your mind, your soul. What happened with you at that point, if it is possible to explain it in words, because I can't imagine that you say, I can't explain it.
Yeah, it's really surreal because for some people, maybe they collapse in it. I kind of think back to the memories of that moment, and my first instinct was to see how Charlotte was, where, what was happening to her. I remember uttering, words that I just couldn't believe, what had happened, what she was saying. And then I suppose it kind of did, the realization, sinks in with the words she said, that Jordan's taken his own life. And so from that point, it was a case I knew I had to get on the phone. I had to phone his mother. She and I were divorced a number of years ago, but we're still all very, very close. And I've got remarried now, and she's with a new partner. But so I phoned, my own wife first, Jordan's stepmom, and then I phoned, Jordan's mum, and then his sister, and my mum, and there I was, just saying, look, this is what's happened. And once I'd done that, I knew I had quite a long journey, about 3-hour journey drive home. And I went back into the client's office that I'd just come back from. And the receptionist was smiling at me as I'd come back in, thinking I'd forgotten something. And then I told her, and then immediately they kind of kicked in, brought my kind of main contact down from upstairs. They got me into a medical room and kind of looked after me. And then eventually an hour or so later, I got back into my car and drove this journey home, having countless hands-free conversations with the family who are now starting to gather at my house, and knowing that I would be faced with all that when I got home about 3 hours later. So just a surreal moment in time, really.
It's perhaps a really harsh question, something that is not easy to ask, but what was the reason that Jordan took this step?
Well, we've tried to consider that for the longest time, I suppose, Simone. Jordan was diagnosed with clinical depression some 4.5 years earlier, so in the May of 2015. So we knew he had clinical depression. He would manage that through prescription medication and antidepressants with the doctor. But to all intents and purposes, no one in the outside world would know he had any kind of mental illness or problem. He had a high functioning job, great relationship. He had his own house. He would function, but we knew he struggled. We knew he struggled with depression and not looking forward to things. But what triggered that moment was not one thing. We kind of realized that now. It was an accumulation of, just not being able to live with the thoughts that were in his own head and the pain of what he was going through. I mean, he said that in his suicide note to us as a family. So yeah, it was just an accumulation of not being able to cope with life, and for whatever reason, that was the day.
Yeah. Did there was any form of blame in the family?
Do you mean ourselves blaming ourselves? Do you mean, or
yeah, both ways? That sometimes.
Oh, I see. Yeah. No, I mean, as a family unit, we're very strong. So we're very together in that respect. So nobody kind of looked at anyone else, and I don't think that was an issue. I think everyone tried to do the best they could with the knowledge and tools they had at the time. I think you always look back afterwards and go, what else could I have done? And you look right back at life and growing up. But I've kind of come to terms with the fact that based on who I was at that time and the skills and the knowledge that I had, I probably did the best I could do then. I just know now that with better knowledge, better experience, I could have done better. And that is hindsight. That's hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we would all look back and go, if I knew that then, we'd do things very differently. But just to add the point that this is why kind of what I do now is about educating people to recognize the signs and understand the impact of mental health and how that knock on the door can happen to any one of us, really.
Yeah, because you created after his death, you created Jordan Legacy. And working now.
Yeah, I mean, that was not a plan or a vision at the time.
Of course not.
It kind of came from the fact that my background had been, as mentioned, in social media. LinkedIn was my platform of choice, and I would train businesses, large corporate businesses, smaller businesses, how to use LinkedIn, particularly, and other social media to raise their brand image. So I was already a user of this platform with a good following. And I just 3 weeks after Jordan's death, we were going through all this awful situation. We were issues with the police and with the coroner's office, and just the whole nightmare of this impact that it was having on so many people. And I thought, my goodness, if people that were taking their own lives really understood the awful situation they're leaving behind, would they do it? Would that maybe make them stop? And even though Jordan wrote in his note to us, I understand what this will do to you, I would say to him now, if I could, you'll never understand, never, at all. Your friends, your work colleagues, people that used to work with you, family, the impact that it's had has been huge. So I published an article on LinkedIn just 3 weeks after his death, kind of going through everything. And that brought in a huge response globally, from psychologists to bereaved people to just kind of everybody. I mean, even emails from the likes of Arianna Huffington, who messaged me personally and just had a real impact on people. And what started to happen was people that had either attempted suicide or had at least the thoughts started to message me, some saying, look, your article has made me stop and think, and I'm now not going to do it. So that was a tick in the box.
But then I'm going to stop you. Which part in your article is mostly mentioned as, okay, that part triggered me not to do it, or that part triggered me to think.
Yeah, I think there's one part of that whole article that has actually been recently shared by one of the police forces in the UK here. When it was shared again on LinkedIn, had over 4 million views. It was enormous. And it was a brief text message, WhatsApp message between Jordan and I on the night before he took his own life. Very normal conversation. I'd arrived late at the hotel. We were going to speak. I just said, I've just arrived. I'm going to get a meal. Should we have a chat afterwards? And Jordan said, Dad, yeah, don't worry, Dad. He said, you've had a long day. He said, I'm pretty tired. I think I'll just chill, watch a bit of TV and get some sleep. And, there's lots of affection in that message, and sort of the kisses, exes to each other. And it was a very kind of loving but normal conversation. And I think that is what hit home to people when I took that screen grab and shared it in the article. That could have been anyone's son, anyone's father having a conversation. And I think that just went, wow, really hit people.
Yeah. You spoke about some facts you know now afterwards, like you could prevent it, or facts you know now that you teach others for prevention. Could you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, I think, I speak to a lot of organizations, some companies in Europe that I work with. I've spoken at the Cabinet Office here in the UK, and so government offices that have asked me to speak, and pretty well the talk is pretty well the same every time to a degree. I share my story, but I talk about, from what I've learned now myself in 19 months, the best advice that's out there, and consistent advice from Mental Health England, and is, to understand what are some of the signs of the more fundamental mental health issues, such as anxiety, stress, and depression, and burnout. What should I be looking for? And every time I run a workshop or share these, I tell people what I've just told you there is what I now remember seeing in Jordan. But at that time, and whether that's just the fact that we had an interaction on WhatsApp one day where we'd been chatting, and then Jordan said, well, at least I managed to get up and have a wash. Managed to get up and have a wash and a shave today, Dad. And we had a bit of a laugh about it. And now I know someone who's not taking care of themselves, not able to get up and get washed and dressed, they're in a pretty difficult place. And that's one sign, just one of a number of signs that we perhaps need to be intervening and having a more deeper and meaningful conversation than just, how's your day going? How are you doing? I'm fine. Okay, well, that's good then. That's just not enough, that conversation.
Yeah. Do you miss those conversations still every day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I talk now, but I talk to pictures of Jordan behind me on a trip we went to Italy together. That's where I talk to him now, each morning and each night. And, it's a one-way conversation.
Yeah. How do you deal with it? Because you really reach out to a lot of people, but how are you doing?
Yeah, it's a question I'm asked a lot. And, in my private moments, we have difficult times. Yesterday was Jordan's birthday. And as a family, we all got together. But it coincidentally happens to be my youngest grandson's birthday, Jordan's sister's youngest. So we have, a little 5-year-old, we have this surreal day where we all gather around Jordan's gravestone in the morning with a little 5-year-old with his birthday balloon. And then we have to turn a switch on after there to be at a little 5-year-old's birthday party. And, we did that for the first time last year, and it's just a bizarre situation. But generally day to day, I have this mission. I have the Jordan Legacy that I've created to help prevent suicides. And, people have often asked me, how do you manage that? Because I'm looking at pictures of Jordan every day. I'm saying his name every day. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the issue of suicide every day. And the only way that I can rationalize it is to say that from almost day one, I kind of treat it as a project. Whether it's an article I'm writing, whether it's a conversation like this today, even though there are clearly moments where suddenly my head goes off and it impacts me, I try to keep focused on what it is I'm trying to do at this moment, and try not to get too emotionally involved in what I'm doing at the same time.
And why would that be such a bad thing, to get emotionally involved for one?
Because I wouldn't get through the day. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't get through that project. I wouldn't get through this talk, and that would be of no use to anyone, especially me, because it is draining. It is overwhelming at times. And I spent part of this weekend communicating with a lady, LinkedIn connection, who had shared a post on LinkedIn, and we saw it. I got alerted to it. She was clearly at the point of taking her own life, and through the network on LinkedIn, and we finally managed to get a phone number. We've got the police, and out of that situation, she's still with us, and seeing a counsellor today. And these I wouldn't be able to do this if I was just too emotionally involved with it every minute of the day.
But did you take the time to grieve for yourself?
Yeah, interesting question. I had a lot of issues around sleep in the early days. I wasn't sleeping well. I had physical manifestations of trauma, from head twitching to, and you'll be familiar, I'm sure, Simone, with these, and where my body would convulse and all kinds of things. And but I was functioning in all other respects. These were trigger moments that would happen particularly. But I remember going to see the doctor with the sleeping tablets, and he said, "Okay, well, I'm aware of what's happened, but tell me, how are you functioning? What are you doing?" So I told him. He said, "Well, you seem to be doing remarkably well." He said, "Given it, but if you need to come back." I said, "Okay, thank you." I did eventually, in early February, so 6-8 weeks maybe later, go for some counselling sessions that were made available, but only really at the request of my family. And I, midway through the second session, just said, "Well, this is a really nice conversation, but I don't really understand why I'm here." She said, "Well, you seem to be doing remarkably well." As two people.
Perhaps this is a really nasty question for me to ask, but do you allow yourself to grieve?
Yeah, I allow myself those moments. And I think, one thing I've learned through talking to many people bereaved, particularly by suicide, is that the grieving is so different for everybody.
Yes,
I try to work out, well, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to take yourself away and sit on a mountaintop for a while? Or, I wasn't quite sure what that actually really meant. I mean, as a family, we did go through some processes. I arranged for us all to go to a really nice cottage halfway up a mountain in February. A few weeks later, we all went and we took some time out and climbed up a mountain and just had time together. And I think the grieving process for me, it's interesting, just as I'm thinking through while I'm talking, is that we've had this very tight family unit. That we were constantly talking on WhatsApp with each other, and we were sharing things. And I've got a great wife that we talk, and she was there. And I have my ex-wife who gets on really well with my current wife, and my daughter, and my mother, and Charlotte, Jordan's girlfriend. We kept this really tight unit, and I think, for anyone going through this, is use those networks. If you have them, I appreciate not everyone does, but if you have them, really stay close to them, because they're important. Even to this day, we have our same WhatsApp group and share and message each other, following the birthday get together yesterday, how's everyone doing? And, so that was an important part of the process, just to be able to talk and chat about how we were all feeling, really. I also did a lot of journaling, so I do less so now, but one of the things I do, and I have just one of the little journals here, just little notebooks. And, I look back at this day last year and what was happening for me, what was I feeling, what was going on at that time. And that's, I think, again, writing it down. I had a good friend say to me, you should write down what's happening to you because you might want and need this someday. And I think that's really important, I think, because that does two things for me. It shows me how awful it was in the few months afterwards, but also shows me how far I've come since then.
So then we come at mental growth of yourself.
Yeah. So I think that's important because sometimes you don't realize in your own head that you have made progress and you have gone forward, and to see it documented in that way is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful said, and most of the people have that in which kind of grieving situation you are, or a traumatized situation. If you are in a healing process, you don't really see the process itself.
No, exactly.
You can't. I want to talk with you a little bit about the Jordan Legacy Foundation. It's a foundation?
Well, no, it's actually what is known as a community interest company, which is kind of one step beneath going up to a full charity, which I'm currently in the process of doing the paperwork to move us up. So, for all sorts of reasons, that's going to work better for us and we can make the transition reasonably easily. But initially the term foundation was used, but when we looked at it, we realized a community interest company, a CIC, was initially what we needed. And the Jordan Legacy, when it was first created, was, if I go back to that article that I published, and lots of people reaching out to me for help, then I went, oh, wow, okay, I'm not a mental health professional, but we had some expertise in the family. We had Jordan's mother, who's been a psychiatric nurse for 20 years. She was in work on the day it happened. She left work and has never been back. We had Jordan's girlfriend, Charlotte, who was just about to put her dissertation in to become a clinical psychologist on the day that it happened. And so we had expertise in the family. They had their own challenges with, why couldn't I save him? I'm a professional and it's very different when you're in that relationship, of course. It's your son, it's your partner, it's not a patient, it's very different. But, what both Julie, Jordan's mum, and Charlotte were able to do was to say, well, look, if these people are asking you for help, here's how you can signpost them. This is what you can say. So I had something prepared that I could share with people. And that then led me to think, well, could we develop a website or something like that? And the Jordan Legacy was born in the March of 2020, just 3 months later, as that concept. But it's kind of moved significantly on from there now, Simone, to having brought in a number of people around me, some real experts, where I've got to understand more about the work being done in the zero suicide communities globally. So what we've done is taken much of the learning and experience and case studies globally where they've had success. And what the Jordan Legacy is now becoming is more of a strategic organization that looks at practical solutions to help prevent the practical act of suicide. So it's not so much at the clinical end or the mental health spectrum.
It's really the prevention part
of the act.
Of the act itself.
Yeah, we obviously cover mental health issues and all that, and speaking to lots of people who work with children in schools now, and so that will be part of it. But ultimately, it's how do we prevent the practical act? I mean, we look at 4 areas really. We look at how can we get our communities involved, how can we get our workplaces involved, how do we get the design out community, the architects, the construction companies that are building the bridges and the buildings, how do we get them involved? And the 4th layer is really around the digital community. What's happening in the world of apps and other digital processes with human intervention that could help prevent suicides as well. So it's kind of around those 4 layers that we're particularly engaging in.
That's really interesting, especially the prevention part, because there are a lot of organizations, foundations who, with all the best in the world, of course, help after somebody committed suicide. But I think it's a wonderful thing to also have a prevention.
Well, if you think, yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of people doing great work at the crisis end and post-crisis as well. But if you take the design out community, for example, when we had architects and surveyors and design people on one of the mini conferences we ran with over 400 people attending recently on Zoom, you know, there were architects showing us how they're now designing bridges in a way that still make them look aesthetically nice to look at, but have removed the access for people to be able to jump off. Current bridges, of course, they're having to make them look ugly by putting barriers and signs and all sorts to try and stop people jumping off. So what we're trying to do is to discuss with the design out community how they can design future buildings with that in mind. And we're already very, very close with one of our close partners, Dr. 𝘱𝘦𝘥𝘶𝘬𝘭𝘦, very well-known architect, at bringing in a change to the building regulations in England and Wales.
Wow.
The design out has to happen.
That's fantastic.
If we've been able to influence that this year, that will be massive. Yeah.
That's fantastic news. And I hope you influence other parts of the world as well with that.
Well, this is a kind of, it's just to give you an example of the kind of practical ways that we're looking to make this difference here, rather than just being a helpline or something like that. There are lots of great helplines out there. Yeah,
it's a different kind of approach and a different kind of perspective, but it is an effective approach and an effective perspective. And
it's proven, it's evidence-based, the work that we're doing as well. Yeah.
I saw that. I did a little bit of research before I interviewed you. So to close or to finish the podcast itself, I want to ask you, for the people who are listening to this or watching, if you just need to say in a few lines what it will do to people if you commit suicide, what it will do to your surroundings, what message would you give?
Absolutely, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, Simone, but I'm going to just pick you up on one piece of language, if that's okay. Now I'm not fluent in Dutch, by the way, at all here. So, but a lot of people still use the term commit suicide. Now that term of reference, commit, goes back to when suicide was an illegal act and was decriminalized in 1961. In the UK. So the term commit is kind of a word we need to remove.
If it's a crime, if you commit a crime,
exactly. So died by suicide, he or she took her own life. I've even heard the term suicided. I don't like that particularly. And I've also heard the term, which is Mental Health First Aid England, use, which is completed suicide rather than attempted. Again, I don't like that one particularly, but as long as we remove the word commit,
then it's okay. No, I completely understand.
Yeah, look, I used the word until 19 months ago. I didn't know at all, so I've kind of had to unlearn that term. But to anyone considering, I think what we have to understand is that most of what people are experiencing when they reach the point of wanting to take their own life is that they don't want to die. We know that categorically. Most people don't want to die, but they want to escape the pain that they're in. The pain that you are in right now is temporary. It might have lasted for a long time, but it is temporary. The decision you're about to make to take your own life is permanent. There is no coming back from that.
I think that's beautiful said. I think, well, you got there right on the point.
Absolutely.
I really want to thank you, and I appreciate it very much that you wanted to talk to me about your son, about the Jordan Legacy. And I really hope you will reach a lot of goals with it.
Well, thank you, Simone. Really appreciate you inviting me to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you.